Mrs. Kimmery Bass was born on November 19, 1963 in Lebanon, PA. Her parents' names were Gideon Bowman and Irma Bowman. She was born into a family of 6 children, including an older sister named Gladys, a brother Gideon Jr., an older brother David, an older brother Jonathan, and an older brother Mike. Kim Bass was the youngest person in the family. With the amount of income that was earned back in those days, she only grew up in a 2-bedroom house. One of the bedrooms was occupied by their parents, while the other room held all 6 family. She graduated from school in June of 1981. Coming right out of high school, the employment wasn't very good, so she decided to join the military. She needed the consent of her parents to join. She had the desire to join the military because her family had a military background. She enlisted into the military on July 23, 1981. Her 2 brothers were in the Army and her father Gideon was in the Navy, but she had no desire to join the Navy. She originally wanted to go into the Marine Corps, but when she tested, she only scored a 39 when the requirement was a 40. Kim Bass's recruiter then talked to her about enlisting into the Army. After her parents gave the consent, she left to go serve.
The first conflict she served in was Operation Desert Shield and Desert Storm, which was from 1990 to 91. And the second one she served in was Operation Iraqi Freedom and Enduring Freedom, which was 2003 to 2005. Mrs. Bass arrived at basic training on big trucks called cow trucks with straps to hold onto. When she arrived at the camp, she was greeted by the shouting of drill sergeants. At camp, she learned how to disassemble and reassemble firearms and learned other important skills. While Kim was in basic training, she also had to adjust to the ways of military living. Her drill sergeants told them when to eat, what to wear, and when to go to bed.
And you had these 2 individuals that wore these brown round hats and every day tried to make your life as miserable as they possibly could because that's what they were being paid to do. You woke up wee hours of the morning. You were sent out. You'd run. You'd do all kind of calisthenics. You'd if you missed curfew or you weren't in bed on time or just one individual messed up, you were a team. There was no I in team. So if your bed partner next to you messed up, you were outside doing guerrilla drills in the grass at 2 a.m. in the morning.
At first, when Mrs. Bass took her ASVAB test, she wanted to become a cook in the military. When her recruiter gave the scores back to her, she told her that she didn't qualify. Her 2 highest scores were to be an electrician and a mechanic, which she had no desire to be. Later, she decided to enlist as an administrative personnel.
At her advanced training, Kim Bass learned how to do enlistment contracts, direct deposit forms, soldiers' life insurance policies, and emergency data cards. Back in her time, this was all mostly paperwork, but she states that it is mostly electronic now.
Adjusting to the military was no walk in the park, according to Kim Bass. She depended on each one of the soldiers to work together cohesively as a unit. These soldiers were almost like her family for 8 weeks. Then she left for advanced training, which lasted about 16 weeks for her. She learned to grow up and mature very quickly.
Kim Bass enlisted in July of 1981. She did her basic and advanced individual training at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. When she was done with that, she was sent to her first duty station at Fort Bliss, Texas, with the William Beaumont Army Medical Center. Some time occurred, and her father became ill, so she did not re-enlist into the Army, and she was sent home. Shortly after, she would join the Pennsylvania Army National Guard.
Kim Bass was deployed in 1990. She was stationed in the Khobar Towers during her deployment. Khobar Tower is a housing complex in the city of Khobar, Saudi Arabia, located near the King Abdulaziz Air Base. She stayed with 193 others. She returned with them at the end of the conflict, sustaining no casualties. She enlisted into the 121 Trans Company, which is the first unit that she deployed with when she went to Operation Desert Shield Desert Storm. Upon return from Desert Shield Desert Storm, that unit was disbanded and went to another state and then became a field artillery unit, which is now the 1st of the 108th Field Artillery. They did not allow females in field artillery units. Therefore, she had to leave that unit and she joined the 337th Maintenance Battalion in Reading, Pennsylvania, and stayed there for 2 years. She left the Maintenance Battalion and went back to Lebanon, Pennsylvania, and joined the 20th Finance Battalion. On her second deployment, she drove in a lot of convoys to forward operating bases.
On her second deployment, she kept in touch with her family by internet and by phone, if weather permitted. Mrs. Bass enjoyed the moments she could talk to her family. She had returned with the 828th at the end of the war. Mrs. Bass recalls her experience with the Iranian black market. The Iranians sold all kinds of things, including DVDs and blankets.
The Iranians, they had little different stands set up that you could purchase things. They had like little make shops, and they sold blankets, and they sold DVDs. DVDs were hot, known as the black market. You could walk in and you could buy a DVD that here in the States came out in the movies. I'll just say, for example, say today you went to see the movie Deadpool. Uh, it would be out on a DVD in Iraq in probably 24 to 48 hours because somebody went to the movie theater and taped it or video recorded it, and then they burned it onto a DVD. And the American soldiers loved that because they wanted to see what was going on back here in the States that we couldn't get over the air. But somehow they always piqued our interest and would find ways to find things to sell. And the American dollar to an Arab over there was twice to three times the amount of their money. So they would love that American money when they would find things to buy and purchase and sell to the American soldier.
Mrs. Bass never really made friends during her time in the military. She had some acquaintances. She didn't try to make friends because of the possibility of something happening to them. Even though she didn't have any friends, her unit became her family. Mrs. Bass was happy to return to her original family after her deployment was over. This is how Mrs. Bass describes her experience coming back home to her family.
It's kind of like a smothering thing. It's like a mother duck with little ducklings. The children would never let me alone. It's like I couldn't even leave the room without the three of them being attached to my hip. Um, the husband was probably more than willing to give up all the responsibilities that he had to do while I was deployed, because he had to be both mother and father during deployments. And it was kind of like, I'm so glad you're back. You can take over your responsibilities. And but even though today he still does a lot um, of what I would have done while gone, and you just learn to readjust and you pick back up with life. And but yeah, it's fantastic when you hear those words that you're going to come back home.
Coming home from war is a huge change. This was true for Mrs. Bass. For her, it was a change of responsibilities. This is how Mrs. Bass describes her adjustment out of the
It's like
military.
you only had to be concerned about yourself, making sure you were supposed to be where you were supposed to be on time, and making sure that your responsibilities were taken care of. But when you come back and you pick up those responsibilities that you left behind when you first left, it can be overwhelming.
Thank you, Mrs. Bass, for your service to our country.